Good morning, everyone. This is DePelsha Magruder. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and I have two sons who are 9 and 6. And I want to welcome you to this Saturday's call. Thank you so much for joining. Today we're going to give a few organizational updates, and then we have a special guest speaker at the end of the call, who Kamari will introduce in a little while. But first, we just want to get started with an inspirational quote from Nashiva Star. Nashiva Star, don't forget to start.
Hear me?
Yes, I hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this call. So today's quote is inspired by the season of giving, and that's the season that we're in. And oftentimes, when we think about giving, sometimes we think about, oh, this is what I have to give up. I'd like to shift our thinking not from what we're giving up, but from what we're gaining. This quote is inspired or comes from the president of the United Nations Foundation, Kathy Calvin, and it says this: giving is not just about making a donation, it is about making a difference. And as you give your time and your energy and your support, we thank you, and we want to let you know that you are contributing to helping us to make a difference. Thank you, ladies. Enjoy the call.
Thank you, Nashiva Star. Up next, we have Tammy Greer-Brown with a reading of the minutes of the most recent call.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to read the minutes from November 18th. The call started at 9:34 a.m. with an opening quote from Chris Baldwin. There were no minutes read. DePelsha went over the purpose and the mission of Moms of Black Boys United, as well as the advocacy arm, which is Mob United for Social Change. Spoke about the purpose and the mission and the 5-point platform. Nashiva Star with the Health and Wellness Committee spoke about the Fall into Self-Care campaign, which will be a series of initiatives to promote self-care for moms, which will occur in November. This initiative will focus on the spiritual, mental, emotional, and the physical needs of moms, and there will be live meditation and live prayer calls, encouraging all moms to enjoy fall activities and post pictures and videos of moms as well. There will be a coloring contest that helps the mind be still and a giveaway of mob swag. DePelsha, on behalf of Lisa for chapter development, spoke about the pink postcard parties kicked off last month, and everyone had advocacy training for these postcard parties. Brooklyn had a pink postcard party with 11 moms who participated. Natasha Marie from Rochester, New York, yay, my hometown, had about 6 people that showed up for the pink postcard party. A good outcome. They had a couple of challenges on what to write on the postcards. Peggy from Dallas had a small turnout, and everyone who was there did 10 postcards each. Delicia of the Policy Committee spoke about the next steps forward regarding the postcards. All the postcards were to be mailed on November 20th, and this is a great kickoff which will help us to move forward in the 2018 platform. And we will host more pink postcard parties, and we are gearing up for the 2018 legislative session. Kamari with the Education and Engagement Committee spoke about the partnering with the Conscious Kid Library to curate a list of positive books for Black boys, and a co-branded list will be released for the holiday shopping season. Chris spoke about fundraising and asked for everyone's help to give to Mob United and to ask for family and sister circles to give to Mob United. Our special guest was Drs. Luke and Adara Wood from Black Minds Matter. This was the second part of a couple of week or 2 week session or two-part session. Both doctors had their bios reviewed, and they had a PowerPoint presentation which focused on Black boys and men, trying to raise the consciousness of the challenges Black boys face in education by drawing parallels between how boys and men are policed in society and how those same patterns occur in educational settings. Talked about the 3D effect, which is distrust, disdain, and disregard. We're focusing on the ascription of intelligence, words and phrases like "you are so articulate," "this is a calculus class," "are you sure you're in the right place?" And also spoke about how boys are perceived as being academically inferior. I'm going to go down a little bit so we can keep moving. Where do we go from here? training for educators on unconscious bias and microaggressions was suggested. And also, the doctors encouraged us not to dismiss educators because they truly are well-intentioned for the most part, and they just must be open to hearing our voices, and parents must be educated as well and know that we are not crazy for what we see or what we think or what we do for on behalf of our kids, and we must be unapologetic advocates for our children. Q&A followed, closing prayer by Chris Baldwin, and the call ended about 10:55 a.m. And that's the minutes for November 18th, 2017.
Thank you, Tammy. And you'll hear a follow-up on many of those things she mentioned today. So going on briefly to our purpose and mission, a quick recap. We have two organizations, a 501c3, Moms of Black Boys United. I'm waiting on the page to change, but I'll just keep going. So Moms of Black Boys United, our 501c3, the purpose is to provide information and support for moms of black boys and to promote positive images of black boys and men. So it's really a resource for moms, focused on changing perception and being a resource. Our 501c4, Mob United for Social Change, is aimed to influence policy at the local, state, and federal level that impact how black boys and men are treated by law enforcement and in society. So we're really trying to push from all angles on what we can do, and also aggressively pushing the system to change and make significant policy changes and then enforce those policies. So accountability on both sides. We have a 5-point approach, which is to influence policy, change perception, demonstrate our power politically and economically. We're going to be talking a lot more about our political power as we go into 2018 and all the elections that are coming up. We want to show up in a significant way. We also want to partner strategically with other organizations and individuals who are pursuing similar goals. And we want to promote self-care. So you heard a little bit about that in the minutes, and Ashiva Star will talk more about it when we get to that section. So that is it on the purpose and mission, and next I will turn it over to Frankie, who's going to talk about a couple of our current calls to action. Frankie?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning, Tapelsha. We currently have several calls to action, and most of us on the call are familiar with the process of the call to action releases on our website. They can be found at mobunited.org. And currently, we are involved in advocacy. We are involved in coalition work around advocating for justice for Lindo Jones. On November 8th, Lindo Jones was in his vehicle trying to fix a malfunctioning car alarm. When he was shot twice by the police. He was handcuffed and he was taken to the hospital, and he was denied access to family and counsel. And there were a host of travesties that occurred to this young man. This week, Mob United for Social Change joined with Lee Merritt and the team of attorneys representing Lindo Jones and other groups on the ground to demand justice. Peggy Bruns in Dallas represented Mob United at a press conference at the latter part of this week, and we basically signed on to work with the various advocacy organizations to demand justice for Lindo. Right now, the call to action is to immediately arrest the police officer that shot and used excessive force against Lindo Jones. So there will be information that will be posted to our website in regards to how to participate in this call to action with specific instructions. There was an initial statement issued by our organization a few weeks ago, but we will update something more concrete for members to be able to sign on to and take action. And again, we can't stress how important it is for our members or our Facebook members, our actual organization members, to actually take part in this process to make sure that we are continuously advocating for our sons and being their biggest advocate. So if everyone could take a moment and make sure that you engage in that call to action, it would be greatly appreciated. The newest case that we actually posted about 19 hours ago, that case is actually on our website, and you can find it There was a young man who was basically apprehended by police, and this gentleman's name is Patrick Harmon. In early August, Patrick Harmon was riding his bike when he was detained by Salt Lake City police for riding without a rear light, and Mr. Harmon fled the scene, but videotape shows Officer Clinton Fox shooting Mr. Harmon in the back as he was running away. The district attorney cleared the officer of any wrongdoing, stating that they feared for their lives because Mr. Harmon issued a verbal threat and had a knife. The video evidence clearly showed that Mr. Harmon never issued a verbal threat, nor can a knife be seen in Mr. Harmon's possession. Despite evidence that Mr. Harmon did not pose a threat to the officer, the district attorney has chosen not to investigate the incident. In addition, the Civilian Review Board for the City of Salt Lake does not have the power to continue to investigate the case. For justice to be served for Mr. Harmon and his family, we're asking that Mob United take action. The specific call to action that we're asking for is that members and friends, family members, whomever we can rally around to get involved with this case, we're asking them to contact the Attorney General and ask that the Salt Lake City Police Department and the local district attorney protect the public by not allowing the death of Patrick Harmon to go uninvestigated. We're asking that they demand that the Attorney General conduct an independent, transparent investigation of Clinton Fox and any other officers involved in the death of Mr. Harmon. Now, as I mentioned, that actual call to action is live. It is on our website. It went up about 19 hours ago, and we're asking for everyone to please take action and also share and encourage people in your network to take action as well. And we can advance to the next slide. One of the things that the policy group has been working on for several weeks now is creating the 2018 legislative agenda. For those of you who are familiar with policy work, you recognize and realize that there is a lot of preparatory work that takes place when you are identifying issues to advocate for and researching them and developing position statements to be able to engage and inform the community and develop an advocacy strategy. So that is exactly what we've been doing. So we are in the process of, we're actually finishing the process of completing our legislative platform. What we have done is we have identified various issues that we feel are in line with our mission. We have engaged various policy group members to research those issues very thoroughly. And right now what we are doing is we are developing summary statements that can be used to have meetings with various coalition partners and various advocacy organizations to identify what their preliminary advocacy platforms consist of for 2018, to identify ways in which we may be able to partner, where there may be opportunities to work together, where there may be overlap in what we envision that we will undertake in 2018. And then also to be able to have initial meetings with policymakers to find out, again, what they plan to introduce in terms of legislation, things they plan to support, and find out areas in which organizations like ours can help. And from there, we will put the final touches, I guess I would say, on our advocacy or legislative platform, and then release that information to the members and encourage each of our members to engage in their respective states. Clearly, this is a big undertaking, and we're really not looking at engaging in every single state as a start for our first official push of pushing policy work. But what we are going to do is identify key states where we will be able to advocate for key issues. And with that, we have polled our policy committee to find out which policy members will be able to engage in different types of work. And we will also need assistance from our general membership, our general body of advocates, our group of 180,000 moms. This is where we definitely need a high level of participation. So in the coming weeks, we will begin to reach out to individuals to find out who would be able to work with us to advocate in their respective cities and states to be a part of this very, very crucial work. And then we will also release a legislative platform and provide necessary resources and training for individuals who would like to be a part of this process. We're also working on our electoral advocacy plan. Right now, we are working to identify, or we actually have identified preliminarily one major initiative to participate in each quarter. And the electoral work that we do would be coordinated, that it would complement what we are doing in our states in terms of scheduling, because we understand that in many instances there will be the same mob in different cities and states who are engaging in this type of work. The great thing is the advocacy work and the electoral work is a great opportunity for a chapter and city engagement. So we're really excited to have some opportunities to work with active mobs in each state and work with them to train them on how they can be an integral part of the advocacy work and then also the electoral work. So we do have a lot of exciting opportunities to get involved continuing into 2018. And as we have everything finalized and prepared to share, we will share that with our general membership. And we ask that everyone assist as your schedules permit. And I think that is it for our policy update.
Thank you so much, Frankie, for that thorough overview. Obviously, there will be a lot more to come as we go into 2018, which is a critically important year in terms of elections and changing the dynamic of what's going on in this country right now, hopefully. So please, please, please get involved. Next, we're going to talk about ways for you to get involved. But before Lisa starts, I just want to highlight that we really need your participation. I would say more than anything, we need more people to step up, get involved, take on projects, initiate things. We have a small and steady crew of volunteers, most of whom have pretty much been involved since the beginning in July 2016, and that's a long time to be volunteering. But the only way we can expand our work, the only way we can continue and grow this is to have more people come into the fold and, you know, be committed and reliable, even if you're just taking on a small thing, just staying committed to that thing. There is no we without you. What I mean by that is, like, we are Mob United, so there's not some other group of people who are over here doing things you don't know about. Like, these are the people involved. So we can only do as much as our capacity is, capacity meaning how many people are involved willing to take on things. So Lisa's going to talk about a great opportunity for you to step up and take on a leadership role in the organization. I just want to say, like, you know, we try not to make it too onerous. We do understand we're all moms. Most of us are working, and people have life issues. So we understand that you may have to come in and out. You may have to take breaks. So don't be intimidated by that, because the more people we have on board, the more we're able to absorb those kind of life changes. But if we don't have enough people on board in the first place, when someone has to disappear for a few weeks or a few months, then we really feel that impact because there's no one backing them up. So I ask that you all really consider getting involved either as a city leader or taking on some other volunteer roles, of which we have many that we'll be talking about on a future call. But Lisa, can you tell us the updates on chapter development?
Okay, here you see the slide that we're searching for city leaders, and basically there are a few requirements that we're asking of a city leader, which I think majority, for those that have already kind of stepped up as a leader, as an unofficial leader or ambassador, have probably performed all of these steps already. But the one thing we're trying to make it more official, and that is by completing an online application. The online application link can be found on at the link at the bottom, which is mobunited.org, and our page, our chapter development. And I will also be sending out an email to those individuals that have expressed interest in being a city leader of that link for you guys to fill out the form. It's a pretty basic form. It's about 11 questions. And most of it's asking your address, your name, date, so on and so forth, and why do you want to be a leader, and have you had any previous experience as a leader. So it's not a complex form, so please don't feel overwhelmed by it, but it's just something that we need to have on hand in order to vet through who will make a great city leader for our organization. We also expect you to be a paid member of Mob United. There's many different levels of being a member of Mob United, so we're not requiring you to be at the top level or the lowest level, but just whatever you can afford. We also want you to attend our monthly Saturday calls. which that will be a change that's going forward, but we'll hear more about that later. So just attend our calls, which are basically updates. We also ask that you host a minimum of 4 meetings per year, which are probably pretty quarterly, but we can definitely host more meetings as your group or chapter deems fit. Part of those meetings that we are requiring is an advocacy meeting, a Mobversary event, which will usually happen in July, a Mother and Son Day of Service, which will usually happen in January, and then another event that will possibly take place, whether a social or whatever your local chapter wants to do. So we're pretty open to that. So again, just a minimum of 4 meetings. You can host more, but it all really depends on what's going on as well. We also want you to recruit additional members. We want you guys to again, like Depelsha said, not be overwhelmed, or if you have to step out, someone else can step in, but just have members as part of your chapter that can handle the workload. We also want you to participate in the chapter orientation that we're putting together, as well as ongoing leadership training. Ongoing leadership training could be any advocacy issues, advocacy training. Of course, as Frankie stated, we're asking leaders or moms to step up as far as talking to local councilmen or legislative officials, and our policy team will provide you with all the information that you need, all the talking points. They'll prep you with questions. So that's the kind of training that we're talking about, so that you're not going in cold and you don't know exactly what to do. This city leader will also be our first point of contact to leader advocacy efforts in your particular area. So you're the first person we're going to call to say, hey, we need you to step up and we need you to go down to this press conference, such as what we did with the Lindo Jones press conference. Peggy Burns was able to step up and be there and speak on behalf of Mob United. So we're doing that. The deadline, the first anticipated deadline for this, that we want to try to get as many people as we can, but if we get a few, that's perfect. But the deadline is December 15th. And again, you can find the link will be out on our chapter development page out on the mobunited.org site, and I'll also be emailing it out by you guys by tomorrow for those that are interested. The next slide that we want some of our groups to be working on is our Mom and Son MLK Day of Service. This will be our second year doing this. We did this last year. MLK Day is January 15th, 2018, which is a Monday. We found that most moms maybe weren't able to take off that day because of work or whatever other reasons. So we've decided to expand our participation to go from January 6th to the 21st. So that gives you two or three weekends to possibly plan something to do with your son for a day of service. So what we're doing is, we are seeking leads, as well as the city leads, but we are seeking people who can help organize other mobs and sons to do a social project. We also want you to register for a local project. We want you to participate in the local project, and we also want you to reflect on your reflect on what you did in your service project. In prior years, our projects included stuffing envelopes for a local New York nonprofit. We went through creating hats and blankets for cancer patients. We also did beautification of local parks and neighborhoods, as well as painting murals. One of the sites we did use as a point of reference to find things is pointsoflight.org, which we can still use that this year, but we're also leaving it open for you to find something within your area that mothers and sons can do. So we'll talk more about that and maybe have more references or more guidelines as far as where to search to find your projects on the next call. So please consider, if you want to do anything, you can reach me at chapters at mobunited.org, but we'll also have a link set up where you can register your event on our mob site, and we'll get that on our calendar so that other ladies can start joining you that are in your area as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So please, as she said, get your applications in within the next couple of weeks. It's very simple. Probably only take you 5 to 10 minutes to complete it, but we want to try to get people a few people at least in place by the beginning of the year. So up next, we have Nashiva Starr talking about our Fall into Self-Care initiative.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
No, you can't. Oh, okay, great.
We hear you.
So, hi, everyone. You guys can hear me, yes? Hello? Can't hear me.
Yes, we hear you. That's good.
Can everyone hear me? Hello?
I do. I think you faded out for a few minutes. Can you hear me, Nashiva Starr?
Mommy, can I talk?
Okay. Okay, so hi, everyone. This is Nashiva Starr. I want to let you guys know we are closing in on our self-care campaign. It's been a really remarkable campaign. We have explored the physical element of self-care, the spiritual, emotional element of self-care, and we will be approaching aspects of self-care. The really exciting thing is in exploring the spiritual, we have done live prayer calls and live meditation calls. If you have been fortunate enough to experience either of these calls, you can attest to how powerful and some would even say how transformative they have been for people. We've been really excited about it. So we are going to be offering on an archival basis access to these calls for members, so you can actually, go in later on and look on and view the calls if you want, ask Kathy some questions, or Jawan, who leads prayer calls for Christian faithful servers, or Shira, who leads our meditation calls. Now, as I said, because we're approaching the closing week, the last bit, which is this week coming up, we were looking at, for the Christian faith calls, the theme was God is our friend. And so Jawan and Kathy came up with just a series of scriptures that they thought was relevant to that theme. Again, if you would like to have access to that, I want to encourage you. You can either email myself or you can email Vivian. Hi, Vivian, at techmom@mobunited.org, and I'm Nashiva Starr at mobunited.org. Actually lead you through, and I'll actually put it in the chat as well. You can have access to those materials. On the meditation level, Shira was exploring what the acronym SELF means, and she came up with a guideline for how to start connecting with the self. And she was really looking at how, as moms of Black boys, how important it is to really focus on ourselves, because we tend to forget ourselves in the day-to-day hustle of being a mom. And so she said SELF acronym stands for S to synchronize, E to encourage, L liveliness, and F fulfillment. And she goes into what that means and how you can tap into that when she's leading a meditation. So again, if you want more information or you want to participate, our prayer call, the last one as part of the campaign, will be this Monday at 12 Eastern with Jawan Stewart. It will be a Facebook Live presentation, so I hope you can join us for that. The last meditation call as part of the campaign will be this Wednesday at 4:30 Eastern, and that will also be a live Facebook presentation. We will be continuing with both the calls and the meditation and the prayer calls. We'll put that information in the event. As far as the physical self-care, I'm very excited. We've been having a little contest and sort of encouraging and inspiring each other to get some physical self-care in. We've had some members in leadership do some hiking, do some walking. I'm going to put Beth in the chair of technology on the spot. She clued me into the fact that she has walked over 3 million steps. Sorry, Beth, I had to put you on the spot. Over 3 million steps since the beginning of the year. I'm not exaggerating, 3 million steps, which is, I think, amazingly remarkable. Just doing, little bit. And so we're in the month of December, and she has just done, some amazing physical self-care. So I'm not going to tell you to go off and try to get 3 million steps in between now and the end of the year, but I am going to say go out there and bike ride, or, do some yoga, do a couple of laps running or walking, whatever it is. If you can, take a picture of yourself, and you're taking these pictures or you're documenting it via video just because it's inspiring, it's invigorating. It reminds you that, hey, I did something really great for myself. And then when you go on to our group page, go on and look for any of the posts that highlight self-care, physical self-care campaign, and just post your videos. Post your videos, post your pictures, and then tag some moms you know what kind of user at your group, or just who you want to say, hey, what are you doing? So that's the physical self-care element. And the last element is what we'll be embarking on this week, and that is mental self-care. Mental self-care, one of the hardest things to do is to quiet the mind so that we can focus, so that we can rejuvenate ourselves, just to slow down. And so I thought that a great way for us to do this would be an amazing coloring contest. So that visual that you see on the screen is the Moms Black Boys United logo. We're going to do using our logo colors, so that will be the grays and the pinks, and white, you obviously can leave it as it is. We are going to color in this logo, so I'll be posting myself, my version of it first. And on Tuesday, we're going to be encouraging moms to go out, use colored pencils, not markers, or don't do it on your phone, but to actually physically sit still and color in the logo. And then at the end, we'll collect all the images that we got and just have a nice little swag gift for one of the moms for participating. So that is the rest of our Fall into Self-Care campaign. Ladies, thank you so much if you participated. If you haven't, I encourage you to squeeze something in. I encourage you to take advantage of the calls, the physical self-care, or the coloring contest. Thanks so much. See you guys soon. That's it for Fall into Self-Care update.
Thank you so much, Nashiva Star. It has been a great campaign, and anyone who hasn't participated in those prayer meditation calls, I encourage you to go into the group. They're saved, I believe, because I did one. I missed Kathy's last week, but I went and watched after the fact, and it was just as impactful. So it's Jawan Stewart, Kathy McCoy, and Shara Hill. You can search for them, and you can still have the same benefit. But if you're able to join them live, it's powerful to be there with other people as well. So up next, we're just going to have a brief update on our fundraising campaign, and then we will have our guest speaker coming up after that. Chris?
Good morning, Moms. This is Chris Baldwin. Thank you again for all that you do, the volunteers. As many of the moms says, our organization is a representation of you, United. So if you're interested in volunteering, please reach out to these ladies. That leads us into the fundraising update for this call. As you know, this past week we had Giving Tuesday, which is a national day of giving back. This was the first year that Mob United participated in the Giving Tuesday, and we did have several people that donated, multiple people that have come back and been a multiple donator. But I urge you to continue that. Our mission, even though Giving Tuesday has passed, there's still more. You can still participate, as well as still encourage your family, sister circle, your Facebook circle. There are a lot of graphics that our communications and graphics teams generated. So if you have not changed your profile picture, please do so to one of the giving graphics, as well as if you are interested, because again, the thought is that we're going to continue to push the initiative of fundraising because we know that with financing our mission, that it empowers us as an organization to offer more services as well as to do more outreach, which is important. So if you are interested in hosting a fundraising event, chairing a fundraising event for in efforts to support Mob United, please do so. You can reach me, Chris, C-R-Y-S, at mobunited.org. Again, it's C-R-Y-S at mobunited.org. If you don't have that and you're driving, multitasking like most moms this morning, just hit me up on Facebook. It's Chris Baldwin, C-R-Y-S, or touch base with one of the other moms that is on leadership. But again, giving is the best gift that you can give to your son, is to invest in an organization whose single purpose is to protect them. Thank you, and have a great weekend. And consider giving to mobunited.org/donate.
Thank you so much, Chris. Yes, please continue to share the graphics. It's the giving season, so we want to try to get as much in as possible before the end of the year. And people are motivated because they want the tax deduction before the end of the year. So up next, we have a very special guest speaker, and I'm going to turn it over to Kamari to introduce him.
Hi, ladies. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm very, very pleased to introduce Katie Ishizuka. She is a researcher, activist, and social worker with a decade of experience working with youth and adults of color involved in the criminal justice system and advocating for community-based alternatives to incarceration. She is published author on Anti-Oppressive Practice for Oxford University Press, 2015, and Interrupting the School to Prison Pipeline for the Justice Policy Institute in 2013. Katie has her Master of Social Work from Howard University and is the co-founder and director of the Conscious Kid Library. Her husband, Ramon Stevens, recently earned a master's in education from California State Long Beach and 2 separately conferred Bachelor of Arts degrees from University of Washington. A longtime proponent of student retention and resilience, Ramon has contributed his skills to advance the recruitment and retention efforts of several institutions and nonprofits. Examples of abilities include the implementation of culturally relevant recruitment and retention methods on Bothell campus during his appointment as an advisor in diversity recruitment. Such methods not only contributed to the institution becoming the fastest growing campus in the state of Washington, but also the most diverse of all 3 University of Washington campuses. Equally noteworthy, Ramon conceptualized, launched 2 501c3s to empower high school students from underrepresented communities while promoting multicultural literacy. Ramon is a second-year PhD student in education, currently creating an ethnic studies curriculum for San Diego Unified School District. These 2 wonderful, wonderful people are the founders of Conscious Kid Library. Thank you so much, and Katie, on to you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. We are just trying to pull our slides up. It's making us download some files first, so sorry about the delay. We'll just get started in the meantime. So thank you so much for being here this morning. It's an honor to partner with Mob United on a list dedicated to books that celebrate Black boys. And so I am a co-founder of the Conscious Kid Library with my husband, Ramon Stevens, who's joining me today to talk a little bit about our library and the book list we created in partnership with Mob United.
Hi, my name is Ramon Stevens. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the Conscious Kid. We're an education, research, and policy organization dedicated to reducing bias and promoting positive identity for young children. One example of this is countering specifically anti-Black bias by promoting narratives and images that affirm and celebrate Blackness. And then we also conduct research on the impact of racial bias in literature. So how this whole organization got started is when we were looking for books that represented our Black children and had positive images, we noticed that it was just tough finding any books with any representation. So just out of curiosity, we went to the local library and we just asked, show us all your children's books that have Black characters. And out of the thousands of books, they only came back with 3. And the 3 were problematic. For example, one of which was a young Black girl praying that her hair wouldn't be nappy. So you can see that there is this gap in positive representation in critical and multicultural literacy. And so we wanted to provide a way to these books reflecting kids of color. So we built a physical library. We ship books to families, organizations, and schools. And we also work to develop multicultural curriculum. So when countering anti-Black bias and negative perceptions, children as young as 3 years old, when exposed to racism and prejudice, tend to embrace it and accept it. A study by Stanford this year showed that children express pro-white and anti-Black bias at this age of 3, and that by age 5 are strongly biased towards whiteness, and that stays fixed. And that's across all racial categories. So our library uses counter-narratives to challenge negative deficit-based messaging around Blackness and people of color.
And Black people have historically been and continue to be underrepresented, misrepresented, or invisible in children's literature. Black male characters are even less visible. and even fewer still are books reflecting positive and empowered depictions of black boys. And several years ago, in the past several years, there's been sort of a movement to bring awareness to this issue and encourage more books being published about people of color. And it was actually, the movement was actually inspired by two black men. They're father and son, Walter Dean Myers and Christopher Myers, who are father-son author illustrators. And they did companion pieces in the New York Times back in 2014 and brought attention to the statistic that of the 3,200 children's books published in 2013, just 93 were about black people. And they talked about the impact, and Walter Dean Myers said, books transmit values. They explore our common humanity. What is the message when some children are not represented in those books? And his son said, one effect is a gap in the much written about sense of self-love that comes from recognizing oneself in a text, from understanding that your life and lives of people like you are worthy of being told, thought about, discussed, and even celebrated. So to promote visibility of books that celebrate and center black boys, we curated a list of 25 children's books in partnership with Mob United. And so I'm just going to share a little bit about the list. This is the cover image, and it includes books relevant to ages 0 through 18. So there's picture books, chapter books, young adult books, and graphic novels. And one of the books, I'm just going to share some of the selections that we have in the book list. One is called Crown, an Ode to the Fresh Cut by Derek Barnes for ages 3 to 10. And this book celebrates black boy joy and honors the experience of a black barbershop. Another one is Malcolm Little, the boy who grew up to become Malcolm X, and this book was written by Malcolm X's daughter, Ilyasa Shabazz, and talks about Malcolm's childhood and the loving bond that he had with his parents and family as a child and how that shaped his life. Another is Before John Was a Jazz Giant, which talks about the childhood of John Coltrane. The Book Itch, Freedom, Truth, and Harlem's Greatest Bookstore, talks about the famous National Memorial African Bookstore in Harlem that served as a community center and had famous people, including Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, come in and visit and speak in front of the store. And that was written by the daughter of the actual founder of that bookstore. Another one that's great for babies is called Lullaby for a Black Mother, and this is a poem. The words are a poem by Langston Hughes, and then it's got really gorgeous illustrations, and that's a great one for babies. And for a chapter book that we have, or a young adult book, is The Hate You Give. And this book was inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and tackles issues of racism and police brutality head on. It's centered around the story of an unarmed black male getting shot and killed by a white policeman. And it's spent 30 weeks so far on the New York Times bestseller list this year. And just 2 days ago, it was banned by a school district in Texas. And it's important to note that books by and about people of color are the minority of books being published each year, but they're the majority of books that get banned by school districts. So we were very intentional about featuring the work of black authors and illustrators in this list. And one of the reasons why is that white authors and illustrators created 88% of all children's books in 2016, and they featured white and non-human characters 80% of the time. Only 8% of all books published last year featured black characters, and that was actually a jump since Walter Dean Myers and Christopher Myers released their pieces in the New York Times. There's been a lot of attention to the diverse book movement, so that number has actually doubled of books about black characters, but the number of black authors writing those stories has actually decreased. So 3 out of every 4 children's books featuring black people are by white authors. And this creates issues of appropriation and authenticity. and racial biases being transmitted and reinforced. It's also in line with a long history of white voices getting preference over black people to tell black stories. So only 2% of over 3,000 children's books that were published last year featured black characters written by black authors. So it's important to support those books and those authors.
All right, so I'm going to just talk briefly about the benefits of critical black literacy. So the research shows that there's positive identity and racial pride when students are able to read about, positive depictions of black people. And this correlates to improved academic outcomes, improved cognitive outcomes, improved health outcomes, and these outcomes also promote student resilience, right? And resilience is important because it buffers the negative impacts of racial discrimination, allowing students to continue to persist. And this persistence results in increased graduation rates, increased college-going rates, as well as increased motivation and increased student engagement. So the future implications of this work is A, increasing access for diverse authors. We're working on publishing. We also are working on the shift in policy to be inclusive of diverse books in education. An example of this is we actually are developing the ethnic studies curriculum across San Diego Unified School District, but it's also more than just having a shift in policy. It's about the shift in policy makers. So we worked with the NEA, which is the National Education Association, about research on anti-blackness within their Dr. Seuss literature that they were centering for the Read Across America Day that reaches 45 million students. Since then, they have actually shifted the focus to include students of color, authors of color, and celebrate diverse books. So basically that wraps up who we are, the work that we do, and we just want to open it up now to give you our contact and feel for any questions. You can reach us at consciouskidlibrary@gmail. We're on Instagram at The Conscious Kid, and Twitter, Conscious Kid Library, and Facebook, facebook.com/The Conscious Kid. Just want to open it up for any questions.
So first of all, thank you so much for joining us. This is Tapelsha. We really appreciate you joining and the partnership overall. I was intrigued by one thing that you said, that books that are offered by people of color are, like, they're in the minority in terms of volume of books, but they're also most likely to be banned. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that in terms of them being banned. What would be the reasons for that?
Right. Well, it depends on the reason, and it's different school districts. It's can make that decision, but in the cases that happened in the school district of Katy, Texas 2 days ago with The Hate U Give, it's definitely a very political book, and really calls out white supremacy and issues of racism and police brutality, and that makes people uncomfortable. So the book is incredible, and a lot of people are very outraged that that book was banned, but when people are confronting these structures, parents get uncomfortable about it. They were expressing that to the superintendent, and he's supposed to go through a normal review process and or formal channels in order to ban the book and get the support of other people involved, and he didn't do that. He just sort of made the decision, and so they're getting a lot of backlash for that. But yeah, and Texas actually bans the most books out of any other state in the U.S. So I think it was last year, or in the past few years, they banned over 100 books. And if you look at the top 10 books that are banned each year, they're generally by people of color, or addressing issues that people of color face. So yeah, it's just it's that tension between that content and sort of the Eurocentric curriculum that schools often have and push.
Yeah, and just to add in, there's no classes in any of the across the school district that promotes critical thinking or critical education at all. So when you start to provide books that start to question things and empower students, the power structures get weary of that. So that intersected with the race is not helping.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment. This is Kamari.
Sure.
Anna. How you doing? students. Something remote. I actually spoke with Katie offline a few days ago, and one of the things that you did say that really struck me after our call the other day for Black Minds Matter, you were saying that when that case in Baltimore, Maryland happened, where the white teacher called the kids the N-word, it went viral. It was across YouTube. Everyone was watching. It has over 1 million views. And you were saying that you guys connected with that school. Could you just tell us a little bit about that? Because I thought that was so amazing that you did that, and what happened when you did.
Oh, thanks, Kamari. Yeah, so we saw that video when it came out. It was almost exactly a year ago, a little over a year ago. And obviously we were horrified that that was going on in the classroom by a teacher. And so we reached out to the school and asked, how can we support? And we reached out to their librarian and found out that their school library had been raided, and they had hardly any books available in the school library, and almost none featuring black characters or black content. And so we raised $1,350 and were able to donate books all celebrating Blackness and featuring Black characters to their school library, because there's so much research behind the impact of the negative impact of discrimination, and so it impacts not just school engagement, but also even your mental health, your physical health, your quality of sleep. And so one of the things why we started the library is that positive racial identity development is one of I think the #1 buffer against the negative impact of discrimination. And so it promotes resilience and self-esteem and self-confidence, and it can buffer against those negative impacts of those racist experiences that those kids were facing in their classroom.
Hi, this is Kim. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. I actually live in the Katy School District, and it's funny that you brought up the book that was banned, because Amber Williams and I, the Houston lead, were at a board meeting at the beginning of November where a book was discussed by a parent. And it's interesting still, because if that's the book that we are discussing, they've moved quicker in banning that book than assisting my son with the issue that I brought up at the board meeting.
Wow.
But I'll be speaking at the board meeting on the 4th, which is Monday, so I'll be interested in hearing the follow-up to what's going on with the book and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's where my children are educated, the Katy School District.
Okay, yeah, and there's been some coverage of it, and I see that there's definitely some resistance within the school district already, and there's people that have offered to donate books for teachers to give to their students, sort of, outside of school, or that still want to support the book and the reading of the book. And so, yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see what comes of it, because it does sound like, from what was reported, that the superintendent did not go through the normal process for the ban. So, yeah, definitely keep us posted.
Yeah, he's quite special.
Well, this is Amber Williams. Since it was brought up, I wanted to just kind of chime in on that, because my concern, education is my background as well, and hearing the parent read from the book, even though the topic and the representation might be needed, the way that it was written and the inappropriateness of the language and the discourse was of a concern if a parent is not aware that their child is reading that particular book. So I think that maybe there need to be some conversations about how our students are able to access some of these books and the type of language that's in them, such as maybe parental permission or acknowledgement that their child is reading the book. So definitely, I'm a proponent of having this kind of representation in our school libraries, but I think we also need to look at what topics are addressed and in what manner. In this instance, it was at a middle school library, and I would have expressed extreme concern if my son, my 13-year-old son, had brought home a similar book. So I think there needs to be some continued conversation about, you know, exactly how these books are written and how our students are getting a hold of them.
Right, and yeah, the language has definitely been one of the things that is being brought up, and one of the counter arguments that people are talking about is that there's other sort of books that are considered classics that are supported and mandated in school, like To Kill a Mockingbird, which, or not To Kill a Mockingbird,
yeah.
Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah, which says the N-word like over 100 times.
Right, and so when that book is approved and, you know, taught, and Black kids are in the class and they're having to read that out loud and hear their peers read that out loud, so it just gets interesting, you know, when you think about the books with the same kind of language, or even worse instances of language or
Absolutely, and I don't think those regulations need to apply just to, you know, ones that have Black representation or minority representation, because even those books have been banned at certain times as well. But even in classes, a lot of times permission slips and notifications will go home before those books or those movies are even shown. So I think we just need to kind of fall in step with that, so that there's maybe more reception to teachers, students, and parents, you know, receiving these books in the homes.
Definitely.
And what was the name of the book? I missed it.
Called The Hate You Give, and it was inspired by a phrase that Tupac Shakur coined, thug life. And do you want to give us some background on that?
Yeah. So it just the quote. So it just basically talks about you know, a lot of the issues about times when people talk about issues of, you know, black males or even criminalization of black males. A lot of times they focus on the problem and the what, which obviously, you know, that can definitely be critiqued, but it doesn't look at the conditions that create the what, and it doesn't question the context, or it doesn't question the impacting structure. So that's the whole purpose of that quote, is that a lot of these, when you see these problems within the black community, often are a structural issue or response to it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Hi. Just wanted to share that I actually have a copy of The Hate You Give. I bought it for my daughter just the other day. I've known that Jason Reynolds is, you know, he's just a fantastic writer. I've read a couple of his books before. John Green is one of my daughter's favorite authors, so I thought it would be a cool, you know, mash of styles that she might be interested in. But so far, she's enjoying the book. Just wanted to share that.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear she's enjoying it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I actually read the book a few months ago. It's a really good book.
And can you talk a little bit about the work you do to get books into, like, I know you're trying to get them into the hands of black children to improve their self-esteem, but kind of expand beyond that to, you know, white schools and other environments where people need to see us differently and see our sons differently?
Yeah, no doubt. So aside from the nonprofit that we have, the nonprofit actually works with schools, families, organizations to ship those books, but it's more than just that, because that's still a peripheral thing. So I think the issue is systemic. So one of the projects that we're working on here is we're designing the ethnic studies curriculum for all of San Diego Unified School Districts, and with that comes in a new change in textbooks and books that students will read. And these books will be all by authors of color talking about these critical issues. So that is how that's probably the biggest project we're working on. That'll go into at least 20 different schools that'll impact. And then that model will then also be compared to the Los Angeles and the San Francisco model. So that work right there will help to get these books, on a systemic level in the high school, but that doesn't stop there because it needs to start out from K through really 16. So the overall vision of that program is to start these conversations and get these books in at a preschool level. We're just starting at the high school level because the legislature has funded that, but the research and the bill actually passed is for K through 16. But yeah.
That's great. And will it be like a separate kind of study track that people sign up for, or will they be integrated into the overall curriculum?
Great question. So that was the big thing that was argued over at the legislature. It will be required for all students to take starting in 9th grade. So every 9th grader will have to take that course, and then it will continue on through 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big priority for us, is to get diverse books in the hands of students of all races, not just people of color. So we help children's museums and preschools and elementary school teachers by curating their collections or libraries to add these books into their classrooms and homes. And that's one of our biggest projects this year that Ramon referenced during the presentation was with the National Education Association, and getting more diverse books centered for their largest celebration of Reading in America, which takes place on March 2nd every year. So we were very concerned about that being centered around Dr. Seuss, because we did research on 50 of Dr. Seuss's children's books and found a lot of anti-blackness and stereotypes and caricatures of people of color in those books. And so with 45 million kids participating, we took that on as something that we were interested in seeing challenged and shifted to books across the country being more reflective of the public school students, 50% people of color or kids of color.
Right, I remember you saying that. I didn't realize that about Dr. Seuss, but I never liked his books anyway. They just don't make any sense.
Definitely. The Cat in the Hat was inspired by minstrelsy, and he took part in blackface and minstrelsy in his personal life, and it's reflected in his books, and used the N-word in his political cartoons and various cartoons that he did as well. So a lot of issues there.
Oh, gosh. And I think you also mentioned when we spoke initially that you were trying to push educational policy as well, like working with the NEA or other organizations.
Right. So it's the National Education Association that is the one that founded Read Across America Day 20 years ago. So this year they're coming up on their 21st year, and for the first time since they started, they've committed to making the event more about social justice and using it as an opportunity to promote social justice and reflective students through diverse books rather than just a focus on Dr. Seuss. And they're working to rebrand the event right now. It's, the Cat in the Hat logo and everything. They're rebranding away from that to be more inclusive of, the public school students.
Well, that's great.
Hi, I have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay, great. You guys were, Katie and Ramon, you were speaking about being able to bring this library not just to kids of color, but also to non-kids of color. And that really stands out for me because there's a tendency to forget that understanding of people of color in general has to come from exposure to them, and not just exposure on so far as I see in the classroom or at the supermarket, but really direct exposure, even in a literary sense, where you're reading about the culture and the history, and a lot of understanding comes from that. So it really it resonated with me when you said that you guys are also looking into being able to offer it to kids of color, non-families of color actually in general. So my question is, how receptive have you found that to be? One of the hardest things for me is when I go to different areas and they tell me that the area is very successful, it's a thriving area, and I see no people of color. So what stands out for me is that the measurement for a thriving area is a lot of success but no diversity. And for me, diversity is a pivotal issue. So I would like to know, how receptive have your efforts been, or how have people responded to your efforts at saying, hey, we have some literature about, families of color and kids of color?
That's a really great question, because start off, so yeah, there's this general tendency that these books of color, people of color, and these diverse books are only for communities of color, right? But when you look at the research, it shows that the people that have the biggest gains and the biggest impacts are actually white folks. So when we talk about bringing diverse books in, or bringing these books into, these predominantly non-people of color or white spaces, there you'll see the first question that I'll usually get, whether I'm talking about books or I'm talking about ethnic studies, they'll be like, well, these are for kids of color. How is this important for white kids? I get that all the time. And then when you're able to show the research that white students get the biggest impact as far as cross-racial relationships being developed, as far as reduction of bias, as far as positive academic outcomes, as far as you see all the positive benefits that you see for kids of color, it's actually amplified for white kids like 2 to 3 times as much, because a lot of them haven't had exposure to people of color, students of color, or this critical literacy. A lot of times students of color will have these conversations in their homes and in their personal life, so when they get to the school, they're kind of already primed for it. But a lot of white folks will say in the research that they don't talk about race at their dinner table every day. They don't talk about race every day. So when you're able to show the academic benefits, then you'll see, for example, these white folks will start to become a little bit more on board and will be interested once they see that there are benefits for their students. But there is this kind of underlying assumption that the only people benefiting from these are students of color, when actually the ones that have the biggest impacts are actually non-students of color. So yeah, at first there's definitely always a little bit of hesitation, but once you can kind of show the benefits that they'll receive, then you'll usually see the white folks get on board. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yes, definitely.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I just found out my son's kindergarten teacher is having her baby early right now.
Oh, wow.
So she's gone for the rest of the year. Okay. So
I had a question in regards to how, is there any information that you can take away, information that you can provide us where we can share with our schools or share with our county board of education in terms of trying to how to bring your program to the county schools? Because, for example, if you're in a community that is predominantly white and not very diverse, what you just said would add value. But is there any marketing information that you guys have that maybe Mob United, we can get with you guys and bring it to the communities where our moms are? Because if we have a mom that's listening and, she's really loving what you're saying, because we all know Huck Finn is coming around. It comes around every year. We know that Read Across America, all the teachers are going to the craft stores and getting their Dr. Seuss materials to decorate their class. How can we be proactive as moms and as an organization, and with you guys who have been doing this, to kind of get ahead of that and say, hey, here is something to consider, and the program is already there. You just need to sign up for your schools in your school district. Is there any material that we can share with them?
Yeah, definitely. If we can get your contact information, or we can do it, we can coordinate it through the mob leadership and make relevant articles available and information about our work and the value of multicultural literacy. And as far as doing the proactive approach with the schools, it's definitely a good idea to meet with the people in the school district or the teachers and have discussions about that. We've had to do that with our son's preschool teacher, and have an ongoing dialogue about it, and even bringing in book suggestions. And we post new book suggestions every single day on our social media pages, and we also post a lot of great research there in that space. So I'm not sure if you're on Instagram or Facebook, but if you find us on there, and there's also a link through our website to our social media pages, we post information every single day that's relevant to parents and the benefits of these books.
But what we can also give you, too, is just like some nice little quick sheets that just have some quick facts, some quick research, and some sites on there that show, the things that we're talking about, So if you can show these people, just a quick kind of, boom, this is the problem with it. This is the research that shows it, right? And you show that research is credible from very credible institutions, and just a kind of a quick sheet that they can see. We can send you some of that information too that you can pass out to parents. You can give to your teachers, and you can even take it to the school district. And the school district shouldn't have a problem because they use a lot of those same researchers. But yeah.
Yeah, that's great, because I always, the first thing I always say is, oh, thank you, we'll take this under consideration, to explore next year. It's always, oh, we've already rolled out our program, or it's already, steps have been made. So just wanting to know how we can kind of get ahead of that going into the new year.
Yeah, and then also, too, planning out their curricular schedules and their schedules for the way things are planned, because, they'll have everything figured out for the whole year. But once you figure out the timeline of how they're working and when they, kind of evaluate these things, then you can make sure that you're represented, because those educational spaces, as a parent, you are allowed to enter those. A lot of people don't know, but the public does pay for these spaces. So you can, enter these spaces or talk to these representatives and talk about, okay, so if they hit you with that one, okay, well, let's start working for next year. What's the timeline like? When do you start going over it? Start organizing. And they might be taken a little aback, when they start seeing people of color. At least in my instance, when you start seeing people of color, you start asking questions about the district, you start showing up. Most people don't do that, and there's assumptions that communities of color don't have value for education or don't value education for their students, when, once again, research shows that there's actually more value placed because of the oppression. But yeah, definitely, we definitely want to get your contact and talking about strategies. Like, there's strategies and ways to approach these things that we can definitely talk more about. I think that's a great question.
And the point you just shared came up last week on our call with Dr. Wood from San Diego State. As you know, we're partnering with him on a Black Minds Matters course, and he talked about how there are assumptions that our culture undervalues education and that, the parents aren't engaged and don't really care as much.
Mm-hmm.
So we are trying to combat all of that. In addition to overhauling the system and changing policy and all of that, we're taking it all on, and that's why we need, great partners like you.
Oh, thank you. Y'all are amazing as well. It's an honor.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I had another question, I'm sorry. Oftentimes, you were talking about the preschool that, your son was in and stuff like that. I remember my son is not at that point, but I remember when he was at preschool, I was so focused on, their curriculum and how advanced their program was committed to making sure that, he knew it, ABCs, 1, 2, 3. Really wasn't conscious in terms of, how diverse the material was. Is there, from a preschool, especially for new moms, is there some things they should look at from a literature standpoint, even at the preschool level? Because, you really don't think about, because typical, you see the Dr. Seuss books when your child is in preschool and all the other little books that may not show imagery. You're not even thinking about that. You're just wanting to make sure that they're going to be, pre-K, they're going to be pre-K or kindergarten ready. Is there some things you should be focused on even at that early stage when evaluating daycares and preschools for your child? Because we do have moms that, have children of that age.
Right, absolutely. That's a great question, and absolutely, and it is important to be very aware of of that and intentional about what your kids are exposed to, starting at birth. But especially when you look at the research that by age 3, white children are already racially biased towards whiteness and against blackness. And so, kids are taking in everything that they're exposed to, and it's shaping how they're thinking about themselves and other people. And as far as the identity development for our sons too, they're taking in everything, and it's impacting their self-esteem and their racial identity. And so it's very important to be involved. And our son's preschool, we go to the preschool that's just on UCSD's campus because my husband's a PhD student here. And they have, when we started, they did not have any diverse books in their collection. And so we have had to be very involved and have meetings with the director and the preschool teachers about why that's important. And unfortunately, they've been receptive, but only to a point. And so we have had to do a lot of the labor of, recommending the books or bringing books in. My husband goes in and does story time with the kids. And so we bring in books featuring black characters, and he reads to the kids during class. And then also, parents can be involved depending on the preschool, but they have monthly parent meetings where they schedule cultural activities that get brought into the school. And so being involved in those types of meetings as well can help make sure that, the culture and identity of all of the kids are celebrated and honored and brought in, because it is very important, not just for your son, but for the other kids too, in their development and countering the racial bias that's already developing in the other preschoolers.
So yeah, we can send you the articles that show the research on that show the research about the bias at age 3. There's also several articles that show about the bias within teachers, and that's the other reason why you want the content to be on point, is because you will see teachers suspending black kids at a ridiculously disproportionate rate in preschool and targeting them for behavior. So there's 2 big articles, one that shows the impact of the diverse literature on students impacting the racial bias at age 3, but then the second is also showing the bias from the teachers that they don't know. And this is a Stanford study that came out this year where you see them, all these students are out and they just watch the black students. And they don't even know that they're doing it. And so it was good. So research like that is good, because even the teachers involved in that study who were showing a disproportionate effect of black students, when we were able to show them the bias, they actually were all about sharing this research. So yeah, we'll make sure to send you all those articles without a doubt, because when you can bring those articles in and you can show the people in the district and those teachers, those articles do have power, no doubt.
Absolutely, and it all ties together with a lot of things we're doing. So we had Dr. Wood on for 2 weeks, but the week before that we had Dr. Rosemarie Allen, who's a professor at a university in Denver, who's doing a study on preschool suspensions and showing the exact bias that you talked about in terms of a disproportionate number of black boys in particular being suspended in preschool. And she even talked about babies being kicked out of daycare for screaming too much, for crying too much as infants. But only the black kids. Yeah.
I honestly have experienced that a lot. When I was talking to a mom the other day, this is Kamari, and she was telling me that her daughter is the only child of color in her daycare. Her daughter's 2, and the teacher insisted that she go and take her to the pediatrician to find out if she needs to be evaluated, because she has a trouble with sitting down, and has trouble with sitting still, and sometimes she doesn't always listen, and she's like she's 2. But at the same time, when she's at home, if you give her a directive and you tell her firmly to sit, she does. So it's amazing how persons just automatically assume that a child needs help or, needs to be evaluated when they're a child of color. And one of the things that I wanted to also mention was my son in his school, I was just asking him, matter of fact, while we were on the call, are there a lot of books in the library that are with children of color? And he was saying not at all. And he said that they did do a presentation last year on slavery, and he actually made blankets, which I actually emailed the library teacher about because I didn't understand why they were making slave blankets. But
What I do want to do now is I do want to have an article, and I would love to have that information as well so that I can pass it on to the librarian because, although we have plenty of books in our house that have brown faces in them, I want to ensure that the kids at that school also have access to it because one of the things that they do in our town is that they make sure that kids are on reading level by the 3rd grade. Like, that's like this huge initiative that they have, and they make the kids go and get library books every single week. They have to get a library book. And although the school is only like 10% minority, it would be great if they had books in that library that showed faces of color.
Definitely.
So thank you so much. Thank you.
And there's research on the benefits of Black kids being exposed to books that feature Black characters, and they show that when reading books that reflect Black culture and people versus books that are Eurocentric and feature white people, the Black kids have shown that they have increased reading comprehension and they're able to recall the material better. So it supports the reading skills of the Black kids.
Yeah, and the other thing people always forget about, too, is that bias for pro-whiteness is not just for white students, it's for all students. So you will see Black folks become biased and internalize a lot of that hatred. So, yeah, I think what you said is so on point because a lot of times it'll get appropriated by this is stuff that we need to do for the dominant culture when it's like, no, we need to do this for our community first, most importantly, and then, they can be a part of it. But absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, we are almost out of time. Are there anything you want to share before we wrap up?
Oh no, I think we're all good unless anybody has any other questions or.
I just got one last quick question. Sorry. So my last question is, how important is it for parents of color to advocate on behalf of diverse books and diverse educational environments?
Could you say that one more time? Sorry. You repeat that question.
Sorry, can you go in there with them? The question is, how important is it for... Sorry, guys, my daughter thinks it's a business to make it deliberate. So the question is, how important is it for parents with children of color to be advocates for a diverse educational environment? How important is that when you go into the library and you see that there are, just a few books that represent, your child, or even if you are not a parent of color, how important is it to go in and say, hey, I think it would be more beneficial to kids if this collection of books were a little bit more diverse and or necessary? Is that, or is it not?
I think it's extremely necessary for several reasons. One, as a parent, being involved in that educational process and creating that relationship with that teacher is going to be crucial for your students, your son or daughter's experience in the school. So being able to, being that parental advocate shows to have, there's research on just parents of color and advocacy for their students. And so what you find is a lot of these white parents are very involved, overly involved, almost saturated involved with the demands of their students, but a lot of times parents of color, including Black folks, may not understand the value or the power that they have as a parent. So understanding that is what takes the shift, because once students don't have these books or have this representation, the research shows that there's a lack of trust that starts to form between both the communities of color, the students of color, and the families of color and the institution, and that lack of trust already starts to push these families out of the system. So as far as the retention in the pipeline, when parents aren't advocating for those things and, becoming, those sources of agency, there is that, you start to see these push-out factors. And it's a double-edged sword, because you have to absorb all this extra labor, right, that nobody else has to do. You have to, this is now, it becomes like almost like a second job, is having to do all this stuff that other families don't have to do. But the result is that you will see, increased retention levels, better academic outcomes, and it also will give you a feel on the kind of people involved in the educational space that your students are in, which I think is the most important. Like, it gives you kind of a litmus test of what kind of teachers they have, right? Are they pro-diverse books, or are they anti? And if they're not pro, then that brings up a lot of larger concerns. So, and all that stuff that your daughter will get, but most importantly, it'll also reveal the kind of people that are in spaces with them every single day. So yeah, I would say it's extremely important. Great question.
Right, and that's a good point and reason to ask it in itself, just to see what kind of reaction you get.
Exactly.
So with that, we just want to thank you so much again. I see that our list was just published in the group, so it's up and running. We'll be promoting it throughout the rest of the holiday season. So thank you for that. And Kamari, anything else you want to say before we close out with prayer?
There was a question in the chat from one of the moms that asked, are any of the books published or distributed by Black companies? I just wanted to make sure that question got answered.
Yeah, I believe all of those books, they should be published by Black authors. I'm actually not sure on the actual publishing company, but I know that we definitely tried to make sure all the books were written by Black folks about Black content, but I'm honestly not sure about the publishing company.
Thank you.
Okay. So thanks again for joining, everyone. We will be back in 2 weeks, which is December 16th. And then after that, in the new year, we're going to go monthly with the calls. So going forward, the calls will be the second Saturday, I believe, of each month in terms of national calls. But we'll start to have other, calls like the chapter lead calls, the leadership call, of course, behind the scenes. But in terms of the big group call, it will be the second Saturday of the month, starting in January. But please join us back here in 2 weeks. And we just want to close out with a prayer by Nashiva Starr.
Hi, everyone. Today's prayer is just to highlight the importance of knowledge, education, and its collaboration with the Conscious Kid Library and Moms of Black Boys United. So the prayer reads as follows. 1 second. I wanted to teach my students how to live this life on earth, to face its struggles and its strife, and to improve their worth. Not just a lesson in a book or how the rivers flow, but how to choose the proper path wherever they may go. To understand eternal truth and know the right from wrong, and gather all the beauty of a flower in a song. For if I help the world to grow in wisdom and in grace, then I feel that I have won and I have filled my place. And so I ask your guidance, God, that I have done my part for character and confidence and happiness of heart. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Also, just wanted to add quickly, we will post the presentation in the membership section of the group. It was a beautiful presentation, and we didn't get to see it, so it will be available in the group. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Yes, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.